haven't recorded anything in a while. I also haven't published any videos in a while. And that doesn't mean I haven't been working. I just haven't been recording anything that will be published immediately after recording. I thought the next thing was going to be another episode of Bionicle Paracosmos. I was actually going to go back and work on the after credit boss, and I haven't actually done that. So I still don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. But that would be the next video that I would publish immediately after recording. So what I'm here now, what I'm doing now, the reason for this recording is to talk about, I'm gonna name it Season 2, which is kind of a cheesy name, but I don't know what else to name it, which would be my next block of videos, or the next block of visual novel videos, essentially. I made a video a couple months ago called ranting about or talking about various topics over Minesweeper footage or something like that, in which I basically exhausted all of the dialogue I had planned for the next episode of the World's Hardest Game 3 at the time. And I don't remember exactly everything I've said in that exactly. But I basically exhausted everything I wanted to say about Season 1. So I'm going to skip over that and skip right to Season 2. So with Season 2, the game I planned on uploading gameplay footage of on the odd days, they're actually the even days, because for some reason, when I said that sentence, I forgot that Sunday was day 1. That would be Monday and Wednesday will be Ever17, by Kid in Cyberfront, written by Kutaro Uchikoshi. And on the odd days, that would be Tuesday and Thursday, will be The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles by Capcom. Ever17 is going to be 34 parts long, of course. And The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, I actually forget. I forgot to look up how long it's going to be. If I were to guess off the top of my head, it's going to be either 45 or 46 parts long. If I upload 2 of those a week, then this is going to take between 15 and 20 weeks, which is between 4 and 5 months. So it's going to be pretty long. It's going to be a pretty long block. During that block, I have this big audition I was practicing for. So I'm not going to do very much recording. So that would make the third block delayed, or Season 3 delayed by quite a bit. It's just how life works. And as John Call says, periodization of life. So because of periodization of life, I'm going to end up a little bit stalled. But there's going to be visuals still publishing that are going to be block 2. On days like Saturday, what I plan on doing is recording Bionicle Heroes. And that's all the ports. So I'll start with the GBA port. And then after that, move on to the DS port. And after that, move on to the Wii, PlayStation, Xbox, PC port, which all look visually the same. Just, the control schemes are different. So I'll call that one the console port. However, I'm going to be playing the PC version. So basically, the high computing power port. So that's the 3 ports. All 3 ports, the Biomedia project asked LEGO permission to host dumps. That's what they're called. They call them dumps of all of the Bionicle commercial games, and LEGO gave them permission to do so. So, all 3 dumps are on the Biomedia project, or all the dumps, including Xbox and PlayStation and things like that. The GBA one is simple enough to emulate. The DS one can also be emulated, I think. We'll get to more details about that later. And the PC one, I don't have to bother emulating because I have a PC. So, that'll straight up be the game. As I've said, I have not watched very much footage of the GBA port or the DS port. I've watched like a couple minutes of each, and I forget what I've seen mostly in either of those sets of footage that I've watched. For the GBA port, it looks like it's two-dimensional, and the motion, it's not like isoform. It's not like Bionicle, the game GBA, where the controls are tilted or rotated 45 degrees. It's more of a, Quest for the Toa type control scheme. It's like top-down view 2D. The DS is more first-person, if I remember correctly, which I may not be remembering correctly. If I don't, I'm not gonna like research this before I play it, because I want to play it as blind as possible. When I saw this footage, I didn't know that I would later on in my life be playing it and recording myself playing it, right? So, but I'm not certain about that, and the console port's obviously third person. Now, although I haven't seen very much footage of the GBA gameplay and the DS gameplay, I have seen from start to finish footage of the entire gameplay of the console port. So that will be very not blind. I'll be very excited. I will very much know what's coming next. I understand that the console port is very easy, but very long, right? It takes a while to get through all of the content in it. Particularly, like if you want to find all of the gold and silver canisters. There are some of those that you can only find after you finish the entire game. That would be the Vazon level. So you have to basically do, and there might be one, I don't know if there's one in every single level like that, but I suspect there probably is. And so you have to go through the entire game twice to 100% the game. So I'm going to be going through the entire game twice. Okay, now, and I'll come back talk about the DS port a little bit later. I want to kind of move on to the structure. So Sundays. So at one point I was going back through and redoing footage of Bionicle games that I'd done in the past, but I was dissatisfied by the footage that I recorded. I called it Bionicle Games Review, right? With one exception being Rebuilt. That was actually an original for Bionicle Games Review. And my enthusiasm for that has fizzled since I started it. The next thing to do would be, like, as I said at the end of Rebuilt, that Rebuilt footage would be like a miscellaneous. It would just be stuff like Stop the More Buzak, all those Mask of Light mini games, stuff like that I did. There's basically just a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. And that would be, enough stuff that I collaged together would make a 3 hour long, 3 hour long Bionicle Games Review episode. Yeah, but my enthusiasm fizzled, and so I haven't actually kept working on that. And the odds and ends or miscellaneous one is quite boring, and so maybe I just don't want to ever make it. If I don't want to make it, I should just not make it. I'll move on to something like Matoran Adventures. Something that, from Bionicle the game GBA, something that I have more enthusiasm for redoing. But that's kind of like in limbo because my enthusiasm for doing it has died, right? Another option is Control. So I have not finished Control yet. I haven't actually finished the main line of both DLCs for it yet. There's a boss at the end of the DLC called AWE, for reference, that's the Investigations Sector DLC that I have not yet completed. There's also a bunch of side content, even in the original game, that I have not completed. So I still have some work to do on Control. I haven't played Control in like a month. The last episode I posted of that, I have not actually played since I posted that. So my enthusiasm for that is also fizzled. But I also have a completist attitude, and so I want to go in. I do have a desire to go in and actually finish that game. So that might be something that might appear occasionally on a Sunday, but I don't promise any sort of schedule having to do with that appearing. But like more Control episodes could appear potentially. I mean, but I don't really like. I'm not really hard on. I won't be super hard on myself if that just gets left hanging right there, right? That gets stuck in limbo. So that's about what the games are. Next, my progress in actually getting that footage processed. So because the Bionicle Heroes stuff, will be done like I record and post. I haven't started that at all, of course, just due to the nature of what I want to do there. As far as Ever17, I have recorded every episode except the very last one. The very last one where I talk about the game. I'm writing the script for that, and the script is already made up to 20 pages, and it actually has mistakes, and I have to go back and proofread it after redoing some of the, like, listening to the audio during the audio editing, and oh dear. And it's not even, like, halfway done yet, and no, I don't know what I'm doing. So, that's crazy. But, everything, the first 33 parts are done recording. I have not edited all of the audio, but I've audited up all but about 5 parts of the audio. There's a couple episodes where I can't do the formulaic normalize output, normalize export thing, because I have to actually add some audio. But I've got a lot of the audio edited. So I can post like the first 8 episodes. Like I can do a bat file and apply the audio in a couple minutes, and then those will be done. The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. So I have recorded all but the last 2 episodes of that. So I've recorded all of them but the one where I'm going to go back and get things I missed, which is going to be really a lot of work to record because I have to click. I don't have a save file in all the most convenient places to do that. So I have to click through some trials and things in order to actually complete that. So that's going to be kind of a lot of work. And then I talk about it in a final episode. But I do have continuously all the audio edited for the first, all but those last 2 pieces, and I have all the audio applied. So all those video files to upload are already ready to upload and sitting in my file system. So I can like get over 40 of those up at the moment. So that's in good shape. So that's basically what the state of those are at this time. If you were wondering what my progress is since I haven't posted something in a while. Okay, going back to the whole topic of the DS port. So the DS ROM is hosted on the Biomedia project. You can download that, and you can play that using either a DS emulator or a hacked, that is a software modded DS. DS is natively, as you buy them from Nintendo, and which you can't right now because it's a discontinued platform, do not support that. And they do not support that intentionally because raw data, of course, is much easier to do unauthorized reproduction and distribution with. So Nintendo tries to make it so it's hard, you can't play with anything besides a physical cartridge. But of course, the user base has figured out ways to get around that. I, being not a lawyer, do not know about all the legal ramifications of doing that. As far as I understand, it's not illegal to mod the DS or give you in legal trouble, civil or criminal, but it is to do an unauthorized reproduction and distribution given if it has a copyright that your country is honoring. So, and that would enable you to. Anyway. But meaning that if you were to do a ROM dump and then you were to copy and share that ROM to a bunch of other people, that would be legally problematic. Anyway, because I don't want to do like more sketchy things than I have to accomplish my goals, I did not software mod a DS. So make that clear. I never software modded a DS. Anyway, this is kind of stupid, but due to my fanness and enthusiasm about 999, essentially, I did just as a hobby sort of thing, wanted to try playing Bionicle Heroes DS on an actual physical DS console. So, I bought a actual physical DS console off Amazon. It was used, of course, because it's a discontinued platform. But it was in pretty good shape. I was actually in better shape than the description that the seller gave implied. It was actually, so that was kind of cool. And I hardware modded it. I added a little small daughter PCB to it in order to display the screen outputs on my computer monitor so that I could, to import those into my computer so that I could screen capture it with OBS. So this is what's called a DS capture card. And so if you haven't heard of this before, it's not a computer expansion card that you plug into a PCI slot. It's literally a hardware modification to the DS handheld itself that adds a mini USB or a USB Type-C port, depending on which mod you're using, to the DS that you can then use to plug it into your computer, and using a special set of software be able to view the contents of your DS screens on your computer monitor through your computer. So the most famous of those is the Loopy capture mod, but Loopy hasn't been doing mods for a while. Anyway, so the mod I used is called the Optimize capture mod, made by somebody who nicknames himself Optimized Tomita in Japan. So I got one of those mod boards and I installed it. And I did post on my Twitter a whole bunch of pictures of all the pictures in the process that I took, like in the intermediate, just in case I needed them in my attempts to put the whole thing back together again. They're kind of disorganized. I kind of slapped them up there willy-nilly. To get to my Twitter, you basically just click the Twitter icon that's on my channel banner on my channel homepage. I think it's like @Stagilitter is the @ and the username is Stagilitter. Yeah, but I'm kind of there might be that there used to be with Twitter that you can view Twitter, like someone's Twitter page, without having to log into Twitter. But then, sort of like Instagram, it seems like they're intermittently experimenting with cracking down on that, which may be not good. I don't necessarily want anybody to make a Twitter that doesn't want to, so the whole idea of using Twitter to post various random things was because I don't have enough subscribers on YouTube to do posts. And Twitter used to be something you could view if you didn't have a Twitter, right? It was something that you didn't have to agree to anything to just look at someone's Twitter. But that might be going away, which might cause me problems. Anyway, so if you want to look at that, so I did the mod. That was cool. I had coronavirus at the time. So that was not cool. But I got the mod done anyway. And it works, of course. And then I bought off of eBay for more in shipping than the item. Infamous crediption there. A used Bionicle Heroes DS cartridge. And it's very used. It actually has some saves on it from the previous person who played it. There's a save that's 96% complete. Anyway, so I bought the cartridge, and then I tried to put it in the DS, and it said there was nothing in the game slot. And I was like, well, this sucks. So I looked at the contacts on the cartridge, and they looked like the cartridge had been through some things. They're pretty corroded. They're pretty nasty. So I thought, First thing I tried was spraying a bunch of battery terminal corrosion protectant on it, which sounds absurd, but the reason why I did that is that's just what my dad does, and it sometimes works. But in this case, it didn't work. Remember, this was not a corrosion cleaner. This was corrosion protectant spray, and it was meant for the terminal of car batteries. So, kind of a weird application there. So, then I tried using that piece of paper behind the cartridge trick, where you'd make the cartridge a little bit thicker to try to press the contacts into the pins a little bit harder. That didn't work. Then I tried cleaning the contacts with 99.9% isopropyl. We're using an old t-shirt, and that didn't work. Then I thought, well, I need to be able to isolate whether or not the problem is with the cartridge or the DS. I suspect it's the cartridge because the cartridge just looks like terrible, and when I took apart the DS to do the mod, I shouldn't have been able to mess with the card reader because the card reader isn't connected to the flex cable. It's literally just soldered onto the main board. So I unshrink wrapped my fresh shrink wrapped copy of 999, and I took that cartridge and I stuck it in, and it read perfectly fine the first try. So I was like, okay. I just suddenly decreased the resale value of that by a lot, but whatever. So I thought, well, that doesn't completely isolate the cartridge because it could be that there's like a little bit of wear on both ends and they kind of accumulate to result in the cartridge being unreadable. But it makes it more likely that it's the cartridge's fault. So then I tried Googling stuff, and something I encountered on Google was try using a toothbrush. So I went back to the isopropyl, and I took a toothbrush, and I brushed the cartridge's teeth, and then I put it back in. I did this a couple times, I really brushed it hard. I got some visual improvements on the appearance, like, on the cartridge, and I put it back in and it worked. So I finally got the cartridge to work. Now I gotta try to, like, I'm in the middle of playing the world's hardest game here, so I'm gonna try to get back to a safe zone from here. And then I'll show you the picture. This is like a hard decision right now, because I could try going down, and then that would get me, like, more coins in this process, but then that's more risky, because it's more, like, it's harder to figure out your way around in, like, when they're connecting together. You might think it's easier, but it's not. So I think I'm just gonna go back the way I came and not risk that. But you can also go this way and get more coins. Maybe I'll try that, because I'm used to going from left to right now. That's what's in my head, is the left to right motion. The chances I'm gonna make it to the end without dying though are like zero essentially though, so whatever. Hyper focus. Yeah. How in the world? Ah. Maybe we should just try for some easier ones. Just to make some progress. Yeah, I won't stretch away though from finishing. Okay, so now that I've done that and failed, I'm going to add an image capture here on OBS. Let's see here, I go to pictures. So, well, this was unfortunate. Is there a way I can, like, rotate it? Yeah, it's the right orientation on my file explorer, but then when I actually try to open it in OBS, it like shows up rotated. It's also cropped. It's like it shows up completely wrong. Yeah, why is it rotated? Okay, well, fine. It'll be rotated. I can't do anything about that. So, now I'll work on getting this entire thing in the field of view. Excuse my very, very unprofessionalness. Okay. So I finally got what Shoes was trying to get at here. So, is there a way to like, in my settings just like rotate? No, I can't. Okay, some weird OBS stuff going on here, but I got the game to run after brushing its teeth, and so this is, I guess, proof by picture that I got the game to run on a real physical DS, an actual DS, and then that is being mirrored on my monitor screen. I also am doing a hand reveal. Because, gee. And then a reveal of how incredibly, horrifically dusty the base of my monitor is. I had to kind of fiddle around to try to make sure that my face wasn't going to get reflected in the DS screen, because that thing is really reflective. Anyway, that's what my hand looks like. Okay, I'll get rid of that now. So, basically, there's like my proof that I was able to do a successful mod, and after doing a successful mod, managed to successfully run this. Well, you can't tell I didn't hack the DS and just download the ROM off the Biomedia project, but if you believe me, you managed to get that old decrepit cartridge to load. So that happened. So what comes next? Well, so what's coming on? Gonna go further into the future here. Talk about my trials and tribulations. So, what comes next after Season 2, as I'm calling it, is Season 3, and after that is Season 4, and after that is Season 5, right? So, okay. What's that going to entail? Well, I have to deal, so, as I said last time, I did manage to get, that Korean Danganronpa to the first of the two, Danganronpa Another, to load, to unzip once I realized that you need to make sure your non-Unicode language is Korean before unzipping, otherwise all the file names will end up being garplygook. And then I was able to use Textractor to extract the text of the dialogue and then real-time translate that with Google Translate. Now, if anybody who's tried to translate Asian languages with Google Translate knows that sometimes some weird stuff happens. So I'm trying to make some effort to learn some Korean now before doing that, just so that it's not rely 100% on the Google Translate. Especially considering that because it's a Danganronpa fan game, there might be something like Hangman's Gambit in there. Yeah. Imagine doing that in Korean. So, that's gonna be, it could be mighty frustrating. I'm not really doing well with that mission. But anyway, I managed to get that to, at least managed to get to hook. So, After that, this is basically going to go down my docket. Remember 11, which is the third Infinity D game. I got that one. I couldn't find a physical, so I downloaded it off the web archive, for which I might burn in hell. I might talk more about that topic later, but I managed to get that to run. And that was a fan translation, so I managed to get a fan translation of that to run, so that's ready to go. There is no fan translation of the first of the two. So we're talking about fan translations of the Korean Danganronpa by, I think it's Linju or Linju. I only know of that many people have tried to start projects to translate those, particularly the second game and not so much the first one. And somebody I apparently translated the first 2 chapters of the second one, but they didn't make a playable version. They just made YouTube videos of it, of gameplay footage of it translated. Anyway, so it's basically not translated. So anyway, Remember 11 is translated by fans. So, managed to get that to run. The next one, well, actually, the Infinity one is Code 18. I have not looked at Research Code 18, but there is a spin-off of the Infinity series called, or it's completely disconnected, I believe, called 12 Riven. And that does not have a fan translation or a commercial translation. So I managed to get that to run, and then managed to extract the text on that also. That's in Japanese, of course. Extracting the text to do a real-time translation of 12 Riven was a bit trickier. With Danganronpa Another, I was able to just select a hook from the drop-down at the very start, and the last bottom hook on the drop-down was the right hook. With 12 Riven, I tried that. I couldn't get any hooks. I tried searching for hooks, and then somehow by DuckDuckGoing, I had to Google wasn't even helpful. Hooking the text of 12 Riven, I found a post where someone inquired about the H codes they were using. I was like, how do you use H codes? And then I eventually, through enough various search engines, found a wiki page with a list of H codes to use to hook text of multiple different Japanese visual novels. There's like a VN text hooker wiki, which gave me the correct H code for 12 Riven. And then I was able to put that H code in using the add hook menu in Textractor and hook. The hook managed to hook the dialogue. Now, 12 Riven, hooking the dialogue isn't quite enough because I learned early on that there was a lot of spoken, non-subtitled Japanese in that game. So, if that stuff is only at the beginning, I might be able to use somebody's blog post to translate it that I found. But that's a bit... it's not like, you could just rely on Google translating the text and you're fine. Also, there's a YouTuber named Sora the Troll who likes to highlight how Google Translate can make some sort of awkward translations sometimes. They might make sense why it comes up with them, but they give you a wrong impression of the meaning of what the person meant. So in other words, Japanese to English, it's kind of difficult to machine translate, given Sora, because he knows Japanese and English very, very well, knows what to try to type in to Google Translate. He knows Google Translate will mess up specifically, and so he can make Google Translate look stupider than it actually is. So it is exaggerated, but it just gives you an illustration. You want to know some of the language, and for 12 Riven, you kind of have to know something about it because there's spoken Japanese in there. And I haven't even started trying Japanese. Well, I kind of have, but not very much because I'm focused on Korean right now. Okay, next game. So yeah, that was kind of frustrating. It took me a little while to figure out how to hook that text. That was a little bit tricky. The Xbox remake of Ever17. So this is a big goof. This is gonna be kind of embarrassing, maybe. So long ago, I couldn't find a physical of the commercial translation of Ever17. I didn't really know anything about like legal stuff and copyright or anything, but I managed to find it online somewhere, so I just like downloaded it. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. And it was something that linked to a download from the web archive, archive.org, but I wasn't the archive.org page itself. So, so I didn't know that there was, on the web archive, there was a disk image of the Xbox remake of Ever17. I didn't know that. And I didn't guess that there ever would be. So they just completely slipped to my mind. So I thought, okay, I want to play, can I emulate an Xbox game, 360 game? Because an Xbox 360 is an obsolete console, it's probably an emulator. In fact, the reason why I thought there would be is because I thought I recalled reading about it on the Biomedia project page discussing emulators. And I figured out, yes there is, it's called Xenia. Now Xenia still isn't able to run at 100% competency every Xbox 360 game created. But there is on the GitHub page a list of compatible games, and Ever17 is on that list. So according to the documentation for Xenia, you can play Ever17 on Xenia. Okay? So I thought, okay, this should be pretty simple. I'll just go buy a physical of Ever17, stick it into an optical drive, one of my USB external optical drive, and then load that into Xenia, and it'll work. I didn't read the documentation well enough at the time, though. So it was pretty exciting. I won't tell you exactly what I paid for this physical of Ever17, but it was pretty expensive. So anyway, it comes time that I want to test this out. And I read the documentation on Xenia for the first time, just to make sure I know what I'm doing. And it says, it specifically says, you cannot put in a physical disk and it will read it. You need an image file, you need an ISO. And I was like, okay, well, you just make a disk image of my disk, right? Well, it turns out Xbox disks, because Microsoft does not want you to do this. Because that is, again, it's kind of like the DS thing. If you could image the disk, then that allows you, if you were to so desire, do unauthorized reproduction and distribution. You can just pass it around, right? So they put safeguards in place on the disk itself to try to prevent people from doing this. So I thought, and I actually Googled around a bit before trying this and figured that out to be the case. And I thought, basically I Googled how do you make an ISO of an Xbox disc. And I found a lot of tutorials, but those tutorials almost all involved using an Xbox 360. And I may not be 100% certain of this, but I'm pretty sure that the Japanese Ever17 Xbox physical will only run on a Japanese Xbox 360. So not only would I need a Xbox 360 to make this image, but I would need a Japanese one. And I didn't have an Xbox 360, and I could buy a used one off eBay or something, but I was like, this is ridiculous. So I kept trying to find how do you do it with just a computer. And other people were asking this question in YouTube comments and such, but no one was giving them answers. And Reddit and all those places. Except for one place. So, it was on some forum somewhere. So I had a hard time figuring out how to do this. And my first thought was, well, probably if I used Windows, there's going to be some safeguard that prevents me from imaging the disk. It's probably just going to image one video file that's going to tell me that I should use this disk in Xbox 360. And it's going to be completely useless. So I'm going to try using Linux. Because maybe Linux can get around it, because Linux doesn't handshake with the disk or something. So I installed on Ubuntu, I installed Bracero, and you could do it just on the command line, but Bracero is a convenient little GUI that you can use. So you don't have to type in the command and find, the directory where your external drive's located, all that malarkey. So I installed Bracero, I used it to make an image. The image is 7 megabytes in size. No, it's not 7 megabytes, sorry. We'll get to 7 megabytes, it's like 100 megabytes in size. And I thought, well, 100 megabytes is pretty big, but I think the game is going to be a few gigabytes. So, this looks a bit small. This is small. I don't think I did it right. But anyway, I mount one of my disks I can share between my Windows and Linux sides. I copy the ISO onto that disk. I try to run it with Xenia, and it says that it can't read it, essentially. So I was like, well, it didn't work. And then this is when I had this revelation, like, oh, phooey on all this. I'm just gonna download it off the web archive, because there might be one on the web archive. I don't know. And so I checked the web archive, and yep, sure enough, there's an ISO on there, so I downloaded. And then just said on the internet I did this. It's like my expression. I might burn in hell forever for doing that. It's just an expression, don't take it literally. Anyway, so I do that, and I look at the file size, and it's 8 gigabytes in size. I'm like, yep, definitely did image correctly. So, and of course I load this in, and it starts to run. You do end up with an error at one point, so there's still something I need to work around. But at least it will kind of boot to the menu and like the opening cutscene stuff, using the ISO that's on the web archive. And so it kind of like, but now it's like, I have this physical that I bought specifically such that, well, I thought that I could just, at the time, because I didn't read enough documentation, because I was an idiot, that I would be able to just put it in a disk drive and plug it into the computer and it would just work. That's why I bought it. But then, so I didn't really buy it to make an ISO, but then I had this mission to make an ISO of it, and I didn't accomplish that mission. It's like an old nemesis of mine now. So you're like wondering, how might you make an ISO of an Xbox disc? Somebody did it. Well, my answer is they did it using an Xbox. So, but it appears actually there might actually be a way to do it without an actual Xbox, and there's 2 ways maybe. One of them is you get a disc that I'm not sure if it has to be exactly the same capacity as the Xbox disc, but the likelihood of success would be the greatest if it was. That's 100% full. So you must somehow make a 100% full DVD-ROM. You put that in your disk drive. A disk drive that is either disassembled with the cover off, or you have some way of ejecting the disk without hitting the eject button on the disk drive. So it's just like some sort of open-faced optical drive. It doesn't it's not closed in. So you put that in there, the operating system recognizes it, it spins it up or something, then you wait for it to not be spinning. Because the computer's, that process is idle. You're doing something else with the computer, doesn't have anything to do with that disk, so it's not spinning it. And you do a sort of a bait and switch on the operating system. You take out that 100% full disk, and you stick in the Xbox disk. You put the Xbox disk on that pallet without hitting the eject button on the drive. So you have to partially disassemble the drive to do this. And then, so like, now it thinks there's a different disk in there than the one that actually is, because its process that it uses to recognize the disk only happens when you insert the disk by closing that drive drawer, right? And then you image it. And I don't know if you can do this on Linux or Windows or both. And it will make an image of what it thinks is the entire 100% full disk. And this may make an image as bigger than necessary because the Xbox disk may not be 100% full. It might need the full disk capacity to store the game. But it will apparently run on the emulator. So it'll get everything it needs to get and it will work. So another way is apparently there's a type of optical drive made by Samsung that has the 808 firmware, and then you do some sort of firmware hack thing using software for some sketchy place. It won't work right out of the box, but there's a way to hack that type of disk drive so that it will image Xbox discs. It's Samsung drives with the 808 firmware. But I didn't really go into research into this too hard. But if you wanted to do it, I guess that's how you would. You would take a disk drive apart and do that. A bit complicated. But anyway, now I have this disc that I essentially did not use. It's a disc that I essentially struggled with. I paid a lot of money for. You could argue, well, that means you didn't pirate the game because you had this physical disc. I was like, it doesn't work like that. That's not how the laws work. Now, realistically, I'll never, ever realistically actually get in trouble for downloading an ISO from the web archive. No one's gonna get on my case for that, realistically, but it's not like it becomes okay because they happen to have a physical on hand. Because they have this physical, it's kind of a big game preservation sin, because I have this physical I'm now sitting on that somebody could be making good use of should they have a Japanese Xbox and want to play that game that I'm not using. So I guess the most ethical thing to do here would be to try to sell it. But we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to just go out and sell it right away. Now it's written in Japanese, so if I want to use Google Translate to help me, I have to try to hook the text through the emulator, which I believe is actually possible, but it's kind of a complicated process. You have to be very software savvy to do it, and you can't just use a simple UI like Textractor. You have to do like hardcore text hooking. So it's easier to probably to use an OCR on the emulated game. So I'm on the process of downloading the OCR right now. The first time I tried to do it, it network errored and then forbidden and junk because my internet is so slow that happens to me sometimes. So I'm gonna try to OCR that. And when I try to start the game in the emulator, once I get to the menu, I get some sort of error message that has something to do with 7 megabytes, which I suspect it probably has something to do with no space to store save files. So I have to Google. It's probably going to be I have to set up some sort of save file stuff on Xenia to get that to work. But I couldn't read it because it was in Japanese. But then afterwards, now that I think about it, it was written in katakana. So I might have been able to. I didn't think of it at the time, but I might have been able to like sound it out, and it might have been in some English borrowed words in there, and I would have been able to figure out what it meant. So I'll figure out how to get past the error message and how to get into that game. So, and then that will be another game on my docket, although tricky because again, it's written in Japanese. There's no English translation of the Xbox port of Ever17. So, there you go. A lot of work. So, there is a happy 4th of July, everybody. Although I'm recording this on the 4th of July, it's probably not going to be reposted until a couple days later. So, happy belated 4th of July, all you Americans. Anyway, because it's sort of related to that, there is a big sale on Steam. And a lot of games like the original trilogy for, what's it called? Ace Attorney is like on sale. The problem with the original trilogy of Ace Attorney, though, is because I've watched a lot of gameplay footage of that, so it'd be very unblind. And because it's very sighted. And because it's a mystery game, playing it sighted really doesn't make any sense. So, I wouldn't be able to really do that unless I had someone to tag team with that hadn't played the game that we could get blinded reactions from, and which I don't really. You could say I do, but I'm not gonna be able to convince that person to waste their time doing that. So, that's not very viable, as well as all the Danganronpas are on sale, but that's I'm very good at those. Yeah, how do you know if you haven't played them? I know, I'd be very good at those, just because of the nature of them. But I've already seen all the footage of those, so those wouldn't be blind either. So again, if I didn't have a tag team, I wouldn't, those wouldn't be very useful to me. So, yeah. The only reason why I'd buy those when they're on sale is because they have this pack-ratted, sort of this pack-rat sort of mentality. And it might be even on sale for even less next year. Yeah. I could play Ultra Despair Girls. Because, you know, it's like an action game, it's not all mystery. I've heard that there's a, just came out a sequel to AI the Somnium Files. And the reason why, that's another Uchikoshi game, and you can tell that I really like Uchikoshi games. The thing is that AI is not really one of his best games. It's not really that good, in my opinion. And the sequel isn't going to be written by him, of course, because he's no longer working for Spike Chunsoft. It's written by other people trying to imitate him, sort of like Code 18. But kind of interesting one. It's really, the trailer is super tantalizing because there is something in the trailer that, if you know what happens in the first game, doesn't make any sense at all. There is something very weird in the trailer. Not gonna say what it is, because it's spoilers, but there's something very weird in that trailer that almost seems like the game branches off of a timeline that's like not the golden ending from the first game. It's really weird. Maybe it's something they did for the trailer that's gonna be different in the actual game or something, but it doesn't make any sense. That tempts you to try to play the game because you like want to know how what was in the trailer actually worked. Anyway, really good at marketing, but so yeah, I do know about that, but I'm not really tempted to go out and play that and buy that and play that right away because there's a bunch of other stuff on my docket, and because that's not really one of the best games, but I know it exists. I like to get through Infinity first. I also have a cartridge of 999, but it wouldn't make any sense for me to play that just on my own again because I already know everything that happens in it. So, but I have the cartridge and I have the capture modded DS for when the time comes. And all this, almost an hour of recording, I only managed to get 4 dots. Such is the nature of the world's hardest game 3. That's better than my previous recordings in which I got nowhere. So, somewhere is better than nowhere. I'm really thrown off though by this, like, that non-wall boundary there. So I think that's all, like, all my updates. Yeah, I don't have an update on when I got the OCR to actually work because I'm still downloading it, but I think I'm through with the updates. So I'm gonna record for another about 6 minutes, and then when at the top of the hour, when the recording gets an hour long, I'm going to stop, and then that will be it. I haven't said when this week the season 2 will actually start though, and my goal was by the end of June, but it's the 4th of July, so I obviously have not met that goal. So I plan on starting next week, which will be starting on the 11th. So hopefully you'll start on the 11th. That's the plan. That's what I'm trying to get to, at least. My competence has plummeted. It's like I do this differently every time. I'd have better, more success if I did it the same way every time. Oh. Maybe we should just go on to the next room just to change up the scenery. Of course, in order to do that, I have to get to the next room. Easier said than done. I haven't got to the all the way to the other side yet. You know what? I won't wait till an hour's done. I'm just gonna stop here. If you watched all that, thank you for watching it. Bye-bye.